Alright guys, in class today we talked about how to identify if two expressions are equivalent. So just a quick recap of what we did. Okay, so today's vocabulary, we talked about equivalent expressions being expressions that have equal values when we evaluate them by substituting a variable with a number. So really what we're doing is we're taking a couple different targets that we've learned already and kind of meshing them all into one. We're going to be using substitution and the order of operations to determine if two expressions are equal or if they're equivalent. Alright, so for example, we have 3x is the same thing as x plus x plus x. Any value that we substitute in for that x is going to give us the same number on both sides of that equal sign. Alright, so some steps for substitution. We talked about these in class today. You're going to identify all of the variables that are alike. So for example, take a look at all of the x's or all of the y's or all of the j's. And then you're going to substitute a number, sometimes that you pick, sometimes that's given for you, for each of those variables that are alike. Then you're going to solve those expressions separately using the order of operations. When you get to the bottom, if both sides of the expression are equal, then the expression is equivalent. If they are not equal, then they are not equivalent expressions. So we're going to take a look at homework example number 1 together, and it gives us the expression 15x plus 15y equals 5 parentheses 3x plus 1y. And it tells us on our homework that we need to substitute 1 for x and 2 for y. Now, just like we did in class today, we're going to solve each side of this expression individually. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a line through the middle of my paper here, and I'm going to solve the left side first, and then I'm going to go and solve the right side and see if they have equal values at the end. So first things first is we're going to substitute 1 for everywhere we see an x and a 2 for everywhere that we see a y. So instead of 15x plus 15y, we're going to substitute and have 15 times 1 plus 15 times 2. Now remember that when a coefficient is right next to a variable, that means multiplication. So this parentheses right next to the 15 means to multiply as well. So now we're just going to use the order of operations to solve. In the order of operations, multiplication comes before addition. So we're going to multiply 15 times 1, which is 15, plus 15 times 2, which is 30. Okay, so now we've done our multiplication, and we only have one final step, is we're going to add 15 plus 30, and we get 45. Okay, so now that we're done with the left side of the equation, we're going to go over to the right side of the equation, solve it out, and see if it gives us equal values on both sides. So we're going to do our substitution. We started with 5 parentheses 3x plus 1y. So we're going to substitute the 1 where we see the x and the 2 where we see the y. Remember that a coefficient right next to a variable means multiplication. And so our coefficient right next to a parentheses also means to multiply. Now we're going to use the order of operations to solve. Order of operations says to do the parentheses first, and within the parentheses we have multiplication and addition. So we're going to do that multiplication first. 3 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 1. So now we're left with 5 parentheses 3 plus 2. So we have some addition to do inside our parentheses, and we have 3 plus 2 is 5. So we're finally left with 5 times 5. Final step is just to multiply those out. A number right next to parentheses means to multiply. 5 times 5 gives us 25. So now we need to look at the left and at the right and see if it gives us the same number. If it does, then those are equivalent. If it does not, then they're not equivalent. That means they're not the same expression. So on the left, we got 45 when we solved using the order of operations, and on the right, we got 25. So we can say that that is false. These are not equivalent because when we substituted with a given number, they did not give us equal values. Okay, so you're going to use those same strategies for the rest of the questions on the homework. Make sure that you show all of your steps for your orders of operations. You should have 2 pyramids of work now, one on the left and one on the right, and circle both of those numbers at the end to determine if they're equivalent or not equivalent.